You're the next speaker. That might be a better opportunity than yelling across the House.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've seen Ms Belich give many speeches and I'd never contest your ruling, but I'm not entirely sure about that one. Mr. Speaker, the thing about it is...
yeah, Mr Seymour, sit down.
Speaker?
Camilla Belich. Point of order. You've challenged, criticised the Speaker's ruling, so I've curtailed your speech. So if your point of order is in relation to that, don't bother.
Well, actually, Mr. Speaker, it is, because it was clearly in jest. I was facing significant barracking.
To which Mr Seymour, I had intervened, and you didn't need to do that. Sit down, Camilla Belich.
Well, actually, Mr. Speaker, I've got a right...
Sit down, Mr Seymour. Oh. Camilla Belich. The Honourable David Seymour.
Mr. Speaker, I present a legislative statement on the Employment Relations Pay Deductions for Partial Strikes Amendment Bill.
That legislative statement is published under the authority of the House and can be found on the Parliament website.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the Employment Relations Pay Deductions for Partial Strikes Amendment Bill be now read a first time. I nominate the Education and Workforce Committee to consider the bill. At the appropriate time, I intend to move that the bill be reported to the House by the 22nd of April 2025.
Okay, I wish I could say it was a pleasure to take a call on this bill, but it is absolutely not. The harmony that has presided over this House in relation to this urgency motion has well and truly ended with this terrible bill, which does attack workers' rights and does take working New Zealanders backwards, both literally in the sense that this was a law that used to apply. Does the ACT Party have no new ideas apart from rehashing things that were tried and tested and found to have failed? There is no evidence for this bill to go ahead at all. And not only that, Mr. Speaker, not only does this bill take workers backwards, but there is absolutely no evidence provided in the regulatory impact statement on the effectiveness of this bill, or the effect it is actually needed at all. In fact, the regulatory impact statement goes into great detail of the fact that there couldn't be proper assessments done on this bill, and the bill itself only partially meets the quality assurance standards of MB, the very ministry who drafted this bill. Why is the ACT Party deciding to, at every attempt, bring ideological changes to this House which simply do not work in practice, do not take New Zealand workplaces forward, and actually have no evidential basis, not only to bring them forward, but also with not sufficient time for their own officials to actually scrutinise them and put them through the proper processes? This is absolutely terrible, Mr. Speaker. And I want to speak to, I don't have much time as it's a first reading, 5 minutes. I want to speak to the real heart of the problem of this bill, and that was, in essence, the interjections that I was making to the previous speaker. This is a bill that does not just apply when people do not work. Partial strikes are often situations where people have things like a union t-shirt on, a badge, a sign on their fire truck. These are all examples of partial strikes that would be covered by this bill. In those circumstances, Mr. Speaker, at the passage of this bill, an employer would be able to deduct 10% or more possibly, if they use the other type of calculation, of an employee's wages when they have done their job, when they have fulfilled their contractual entitlement, and the only thing that they are doing is taking action to support their bargaining that they're having with the employer. Now, this bill, I would even go as far to say, goes against the object of the Employment Relations Act. The object of the Employment Relations Act is to promote collective bargaining. And what we have seen, and we've seen the CTU state this today, that this bill will do the exact opposite of promoting collective bargaining. This will actually possibly encourage the use of the full withdrawal of labour from workplaces. So encourage more strikes. So be more inconvenient to the public, mean that people can't access the public services that we all want them to see, because they don't have the option of a partial strike without financial penalty. This is a ridiculous proposition to put forward that people should, and employers should be able to dock people's wages, their hard-earned wages, when they have done the job they're contracted to do. This could include things like coaching at schools. That would be impacted by this. If you decided not to do that, if you weren't paid for it, that could be considered a partial strike, and you might actually be paid less as a result of that. Doing extra duties, attending a rally during your lunch break, that would be considered coaching. Yeah, you know, like a sports coaching team. It's something that happens quite often in schools, and schools do have industrial action. So, yeah, coaching that people might do as an additional thing to their job. Now, I do note in the bill, and I'm grateful that it does exclude partial strikes for things like health and safety. That is correct. That is the way that it should be. But there are so many other different types of ways that people could be political in their role, supporting the role of their union, their right to collectively bargain, which is protected under the Employment Relations Act, which would be covered by this bill. This is a bill, and I'm looking at members opposite, that stops people being paid the minimum wage if they have a deduction for a partial strike. This is what you're passing today. It could be people who do their entire contracted duties, who do not breach their contract, who do not get paid the minimum wage because they're taking part in their union action for better pay and conditions. This is taking New Zealand workplaces literally backwards to a different time when the law came into place. There is no evidence. There's actually mistakes in this legislation. It has been rushed through. I know that we are having a select committee, and I feel silly saying that I'm grateful for it, but I am. I do not commend it to the House.